careful. Oh my gosh.
Okay, well, this should be a pretty quick, easy meeting. It's that time of year for us to take a look at our policies and procedures, our rating and ranking that we put in the book every year. So we'll just talk about some things that we have had to mention before, see what we'd like to update.
That was kind of way back.
I'm not fixing. Sorry, peeps. You guys want to come early. Prepared. Oh, man.
But before we dive into that, did everyone check out the minutes?
Sounds good.
I reviewed them. Christie, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Awesome. Any opposed? Okay, great. So I started to make some changes to this, to our rating and ranking in your packet. But I did it in suggesting mode, which I've now learned doesn't print when you print it out. So, the main change, and if we're going through this and I skip over anything that anyone wants to talk about, feel free to jump in. I'm just gonna review some things that we talked about in the last year that we wanted to revisit at this time. Starting in the funding information section on number 4. We've had this one for a couple of years now, excuse me, that a single entity cannot receive more than $250,000. You know, we wanted there to be equity throughout the applicants, and not just have one city get most or, you know, a large chunk of the money. So we put that in place. But, you know, a couple considerations recently, the cost of everything is so expensive. It's hard to get a project done with that much money. And also, hopefully this last year was an anomaly when we just didn't have as many applicants as we normally would, but if that were higher, you know, we'd have an easier time spending our money. I don't know, what are your thoughts? Do we wanna still try and keep it low and promote equity, or? I don't know.
The amount of the grant going up
It's been pretty
with
steady.
everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can just speak, Mayor Allen. Christie and I went to the state policy meeting a month ago. Seemed like everybody was raising theirs up to 300. Was there any 350s? Oh, I think everybody raised their maximums up to 300. So Christie and I discussed that. That might be the way to go. But it's up to this group. I would.
I don't have a problem with
Everybody there gave their reasons why, and it sounded good, and Christie just explained a couple of them, so that'd be my suggestion. That.
Along with raising it, could we put something in there that after, kind of like 5, where it talks about after fully funding all projects, if we have fully funded the projects in ranking order and there aren't any more projects and we have money left over, can we allocate that to the projects that are funded in excess of the 300,000?
We do have a policy in place that allows us to do that for multi-year projects.
Right.
So we can, you know, start funding next year, this year, so that we don't have to dip into next year's money. But the issue with a 1-year project is that DWS has is like that you need to plan and budget for what you have available and like your match and things like that, because your match percentage will be different if you then get more money, and that influenced your score when we were rating and ranking them.
Oh, that's true. That's right. I didn't think about the match. Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
But the multi-year is an option. I always tell applicants, apply for multi-year if we have extra money. You might get it up front, but the risk you run is that if we don't have extra money, then you have to spread your project out over 2 years. But
Okay, thank you.
Alright, so we'll raise to 300,000. And still just limit that. So it could be more than one project, but total for all projects has to be 300,000. Okay,
What was it over 2 years was you could spend on that? Were we gonna raise that too?
that's a good question.
That was 400,
That was
Mhm.
400.
over 2 years.
So it's 200 a year.
I just wondered if that needed to be raised at the same
That's a
time.
good point.
There's no point.
We raised that to 50, didn't we? Let's raise that to 50, let's raise that to, we don't want to get too high,
No,
where
that's,
we already take out the,
I don't have a problem with that at 400. I mean, that's 200,000 a year
yeah,
to do it, and it's an extra 100,000. It's just, I think that's okay.
that's a pretty
Yeah,
I thought we ought to address it.
no, that's a good point.
good point. So just leave it at 4,
That's my
I think.
feeling.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Again, if I skip over something that you wanna talk about, just let me know, we go back. Oh, here's an important topic to talk about is number 5, we have the set aside for a revolving loan fund of $20,000. And we've never not used all of our money before, so I didn't know the process of using that money. And so I met with DWS about set asides, how they work, what our options are. And the way that set asides work, apparently, is that we have to decide before the how to apply workshop. So before the cycle even opens up to applicants, that we want to take some money off the top. So you can't take it off the back, you can only take it off the top to do any sort of set aside.
That doesn't make sense.
So Christie has a crystal ball to the how to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Well, that's,
And we're hoping this year that if we put into place the interview type thing, that there won't be any money, so.
yeah,
that's,
and we don't wanna like take some off the top and then not be able to
No,
fill
that's
fund
correct.
all
On
our
someone
projects.
else, yeah.
Yeah,
no, you don't want to do that.
yeah. So,
I just leave it on there and say it's mine.
Yeah.
little inside joke.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I know, I swear we talked in circles for like 10 minutes and I was like, so, yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't
get that
sound,
crystal ball.
that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, and the way that other AOGs are able to like just spend like the rest of their money without taking it off the top is they do an application in the beginning for just say like $50,000, like a small amount. Hi, Melissa. For just a small amount. And then at the end, if there is more money left over, they go back and they amend their request to be the balance. If that makes sense, so. Yes, just another fun CDBG Ferris wheel. Alright, so then the next one that I had marked for us to talk about would be under the rating and ranking information. You'll notice that it goes from 14 straight to 16 because I added in a 15 in suggestion mode and then that didn't print. So I'll just read to you what I put there. Something along the lines of all applicants must complete or nearly complete their web grants application and schedule a meeting with AOG staff to review the status of your application in December. Is that,
and that's to try to
Okay, yeah,
keep us from making the mistakes.
Right.
we made
Yeah.
last time.
that work?
I like that. Nearly, you have nearly in there, so.
Yeah, that means you basically, you at least have to have it started, and then when we
Right.
meet, we can
Right.
go over all the things that you don't have in there yet.
That'll
Or,
put you till the last
And you also,
week of
you also
December.
get an idea then who's serious about applying and how much.
yeah,
And when does it due? In January. When's the final thing due?
January 31st,
So that, okay, so that gives them a month.
yeah,
I think that's good.
To advertise a meeting or something,
Mhm.
they may have forgot.
yeah,
Okay.
make sure they have all their documents and if they need to do an income survey and all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, did we discuss that in this meeting last time, or did we discuss that out of the state?
That was this
It
meeting.
was this meeting,
Yeah.
okay, so I think those are good dates on that.
So that's my birthday. Can we have a birthday party and cake?
Yes, we can,
Today's your birthday?
No, January 31st.
Oh.
December
okay.
31st?
January.
January 31st, sure, let's have a party.
We got 20,000 in a revolving fund.
Well, you plan it. You plan your office, just have chocolate up there for me, I'll be there.
Okay, and then there's the things that, are just regularly updated, you know, the years and everything like that. But Josh, I meant to ask you, what's your official job title? So I can add it in here. All right, I'll get it later, that's all right.
Josh Cook.
Jacob. Okay, so we haven't really changed our rating and ranking much in the last years. I don't think that's a problem. I think I like our rating and ranking criteria. They make sense to me. The only one that we the main one that we revisit every year just to make sure that the regional priorities are in line is number 10, the regional project priority. So I think we've had this same order for about 2 years now. Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry, for the actual
This
rating
number
ranking.
10.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we've had this order for 2 years now, with housing activities being the highest, most points. And then if you don't have it in front of you, so we have the LMI housing activities as the most points, then the public utility infrastructure, then the public service activities, then community facilities or removal of ADA barriers, and then last but not least, public health and safety equipment.
Good.
Any thoughts about any desire to change or?
I have a question just on, I mean, I understand housing and I think that's an important one to keep there, especially with all of the deeply affordable and attainable dollars coming down from all the work that Wayne Niederhauser has done. But I'm also wondering if we should mention at all like systems, meaning like the homeless response system or, you know, things like that, like shelters and that sort of thing, or criminal justice, or like beyond housing, like for example, this isn't eligible because it's in Ogden, but let's say Washington Terrace was going to build a day center for the homeless. Like that would be a great opportunity to help the community, right? To get people off of the streets and out of the parks. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way to like have that in there, or is that already represented in one of the categories we already have?
Yeah, so if you look on number 4, I think it addresses, at least to an extent, what you're getting at. So if it is a housing project, you get more points for the lower level of AMI. So 4A is the percentage of 30% or less, and then B is 31 through 50%, C is 51 through 80%, and then D is LMI, presumed LMI person, so that would include, you know, victims of domestic violence or, you know, abused children, or, you know, people who are typically living in low-income households or poverty, and then the targeted 100% LMI persons and households. So that would be your centers, like you're talking about, where you have to be, you know, either homeless or low moderate income to even be served by that. Does that make
So,
sense?
yeah, I mean, the way the AMI, like the way that's listed though, it still, I don't think I would read that as systems. So for example, like a receiving center, right? Which is a part of like criminal justice and a part of homelessness and kind of those systems level work, that community level work. And maybe it's irrelevant because we have such small communities right now. But I'm just thinking for the cities, I just think buildings or infrastructure to deal with social challenges would be an interesting one to make sure we have on there so that cities can access beyond housing, right? Like bricks and mortar type stuff for land development. Like what if West Weber wanted to put in a receiving center or something like that? Would that be, are you saying that that's by population, by income levels?
Sorry, what do you mean by population?
Well, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So when I said like a receiving center in West Weber, not that that's ever going to happen, so it shouldn't get outside of this room.
So let me,
So I don't want anybody quoting me on that.
so a receiving center, Melissa, explain what a receiving center would be.
So a receiving center is like a 48-hour emergency room type of a deal where people who are, let's say, experiencing homelessness, like a veteran, right? Like maybe they're experiencing homelessness and they are intoxicated. Or maybe they're having mental health and they're having a PTSD episode or something like that. They can go to a receiving center instead of going to jails. You don't want to penalize someone, right, when they just need mental health needs. So things like that infrastructure for cities will become even more important, as important as, say, a fire truck, as an example. So it's not specifically housing. And so I just wanted to bring that category up because even though we have small communities, those types of things are super important. Like I know in Morgan, and I'm not going to speak to Morgan too much, but you know, I do know that their community has faced, like the sheriff's office has faced double the suicide calls, right? So if they chose to put some sort of clinic so that they don't have to come all the way to Weber, right? They should be able to build something like that. And so I guess that's my question is, do we have a category for infrastructure like that? Does that make sense?
Infrastructure beyond a sewer line. You mean like, because that's
Beyond
where,
what?
because when our infrastructure that we have in our project priority is utility infrastructure. So you're wondering for like a building.
Yeah, like if that example can fit into the categories, great. But if not, I think we should, and maybe not this year, but maybe in future years, we should be discussing that. Because that's a greater and greater need, I think, for local government to deal with.
Yeah, so if that application were to come into me right now, it would depend to me on what the scope of the building was going to be. So like if there's a bedroom and a bathroom and a kitchen, I think that would fall under LMI housing activities, even if it's like short-term or whatever. But if it was literally a day center where you get food and, you know, mental health care, you know, talk to someone or something, I think that would be probably under community facilities.
Okay. Even if it was like contracted out with McKay, for example, in Morgan County.
I'm not sure who that is.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just think there's a lot of public-private partnerships that will be evolving. And so I just, and I can be quiet for now. I just wanted to bring it up for discussion because we only kind of do this once a year. So I just wanted to bring it back to the table a little bit.
Yeah, no, that was a great comment. So now, like thinking of that as a community facility, do you still feel comfortable with this order? And there's no reason why some of these can't have the same score. Like if we thought that a community facility should get the same amount of points as a public service activity, we could do that.
So Melissa, so in my community where I have Ogden Regional Medical Center, and I get reports all the time of, they'll take, a suicide victim or a suicide threat and whatever, and they'll take them right to the hospital. Is that kind of what you're talking about, but a smaller?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about Morgan County, for example. They don't have that, right? So what if Ogden Regional wanted to have a small building with, say, 3 doctor's offices and, to address, people who are struggling with mental health or substance abuse or, right, that haven't gone to jail yet necessarily, right? So there are social issues in all communities, and that might be something that Morgan County wants to do in the future.
We did fund recently, an expansion of the Weber Morgan Health Department. We put a footprint in Morgan County there, and I'm not sure if they offer those services there or not, but.
They do. Well, they don't offer the particular ones that I'm explaining for like suicide prevention, but like that makes sense because they're a public entity. And so it falls squarely into one of these categories. But if Ogden Regional is a private institution, right, and they want to do something, but it's a public-private partnership, that's where I'm questioning what would fall where.
Yeah.
So
Because
if we were to,
sorry.
oh, sorry, if we were to allow that or place that in a category and they received CDBG funding to construct that addition to the Ogden Regional for this use, would it not be restricted to that use though? I don't know. Could those providers see other patients there, or would it be restricted solely as a receiving center?
Well, I'm just thinking, I mean, we can use Tooele as an example too, right? Where you guys might want to start having a day center or a receiving center in Tooele. So I'm not answering your question, sorry. I'm realizing I'm probably diverting a little bit, but if
we have something similar to that, so I'm just trying to figure out, ours is run by SwitchPoint, so it's a public-private partnership, but that is all they do. That's solely all they do. You had just mentioned about having a doctor's office that has 2 or 3 doctors in it that can treat the mental health. But what came to my mind was if we're using CDBG funding, then they would be restricted to only serving that population. They wouldn't be able to serve the general population. That was my question.
Yeah, that would be tricky because they would have to serve at least 51% of that population. Okay. But then that means that like someone comes in and they're needing mental health services and you're asking them to see their tax documents or their income or whatever. It's like,
yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out in my brain is how we phrase that or word that to make it fit within the criteria of CDBG funding.
Yeah, thank you, Rochelle. That's a really good comment. I really appreciate that because that's what I call systems, right? Like local government is dealing with social challenges.
Oh, absolutely, and it's needed.
Yeah.
And as an application comes in, and if we have this interview, I would think that staff would be able to tweak it so that it would fit the right categories to help it get funding if it warrants funding.
But I think that the CDBG, and this isn't Christy's fault, she makes it as easy as possible. It's a beast. And you're not going, unless you know for sure it's going to be something eligible, right? Like it's going to be hard to sell that to anybody to go through all of that process to hope, right? And also like there's a lot of CDBG that we can't control. So if I actually think I don't think leaving it up to like potential staff, I don't think that that's doable just given what the experience that I've seen with CDBG for the last couple of years.
Yeah, so Christy, do you kind of understand what she's talking about. I mean, do you know enough about it? You can maybe contact your ALG friends throughout the state and see if they know of anything like this, or if they have ever experienced an example of an application for that and how they would handle it, or
where we need to put it in criteria to, or
Yeah, because-
for coming years, whatever.
it seems like when you say private public partnership or whatever, PPP, it's like, it seems like CDBG is gonna say no way. I don't know. But-
Yeah, I can see if there's been any projects like that have been done, and just like what lessons they learned, or
Okay.
what came out of that. I will say, like, if someone came with the way that we have it now and they wanted to build a substance abuse something, that is eligible still in our criteria. So just the matter of how they were gonna income qualify, if they were gonna serve more than just a certain population, things like that. And the way that it scores, like I said, it would.
And my thought is like how we ranked regional, right? Like those regional things are like good for across the region, right? Like that will help the region. And so even something like, you know, Rochelle's example, like real life example, not my silly hypothetical one, I think like that, theoretically, that's not by individual coming into the building, right? Like there's a way that we've done that we can pre-advance say this type of public good, right? But we maybe define it by social challenges maybe, or by the systems, right? Because local government hasn't ever had to necessarily, they've dealt with the consequences of, right, mental health and homelessness and criminal justice, but they've never been legislated, right, to deal with that. Like there's no infrastructure for local government to be working on these types of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Like you're talking about,
I don't know.
like instead of being taken to jail, you're taken to like a private or like a local
Yeah.
center.
But see, if you're talking a community, you know, we're all talking a community. And if you're talking a community and you got a drunk guy out there that's causing some problems, you just want to take him to a receiving center. I don't care whether he's homeless or whether he lives up in Upper Uinta in Weber County. You know, the best thing for the community is to get him some 48-hour help if we can before we send him to jail. So,
Right.
you know, but he's making $500,000 a year, but he just screwed up and he needs a little bit of help.
Right. And that's kind of my point is
But, yeah,
you wouldn't
so
do income qualification
But
per person walking in the door, right? You would say our community needs this.
Right. See, that's how you have to, you couldn't say, you know, what is your
What's your
annual income? See, and that's the hard part, but that makes perfect sense to me. It doesn't matter. Anybody in Tooele County is welcome in there. I don't care what you make. Anybody in Weber County, well, unless you live in Ogden, but still, if you're in Ogden and you have to be taken to that place, then, you know.
Right. And so it's like,
how does CDBG think about that? Like you said,
Right.
how does the beast feel?
and to me, it's a hybrid between like regional and a hybrid between public good or public works, but it's not
Right.
quite one of those. It just kind of is its own thing, but it kind of can take
Yeah.
pieces of each one of the categories we already have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll shut up
obviously-
now.
No, great comments. Great
Well,
things
let's
to
have
think about.
Christie, if you don't mind, reach out to your ALGs, if nothing else. Maybe, when is our next state meeting? Do we have another one this year or not till next year?
So we have one every fall and every spring, so we should have one in September.
So we may have a state policy board meeting in September. Maybe we could just throw it out on the table and as a discussion item and see what the beasts in Salt Lake think about it. I don't know. It makes complete sense.
Yeah, well, and traditionally, like something like homelessness, local government deals with the consequences of, but hasn't ever been given funding streams, right, to build an infrastructure for, but it's still kind of low income, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be low income to have these problems, right? But you're kind of addressing these sort of more dense community social issues.
Yeah, okay. Good thinking. Melissa? If you'd have rode down with me, I could have listened to an hour of that because I was stuck in traffic for an hour. It
I
was a
saved you
mess.
from a future receiving center visit.
All right, well, other than those things, I don't have any other notes about things we've talked about throughout the year to readdress. Like I said, we haven't, other than changing the order from year to year as we feel appropriate, we haven't really changed much. Again, I think it works well. Open to any other comments or suggestions. Otherwise, I can get this finalized and
Good.
get it finalized. Okay, well,
Want a motion to approve,
yes, please.
tentatively approve this or approve this?
Yes, with the changes
As we
discussed.
discussed.
Yeah,
Okay, I make that motion.
I'll second.
awesome. Any opposed? Perfect. All right. Gang, that is all we had for today.
Christy, I just want to commend you. You've done such a great job update, like just with all the changes and making things easier for people. You've just
Oh,
done a
thank
really
you.
great job. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. CDBG is a beast. You said it. It's spot on.
Yeah,
It was tough.
wish there was a way to make it easier for people to apply.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just,
I don't understand all their thinking on, so, but it's not just this grant, there's
yeah,
all grants.
but it just doesn't make sense. It's so hard for us to get $300,000 and those guys back there asked for, $1 billion.
Yeah.
It's like, we have to jump through hoops after hoop after, I don't know,
Yeah.
frustrating. Okay.
Very frustrating. Well, thank you all for your time. I'll give you 21 minutes back. See you later.
We'll see.
Thank you.